Guess we're ready for questions.
Mark, Coach Yost was saying that the last two games you guys faced like four blitzes. How do you get Justin ready for a team that traditionally blitzes quite a bit?
Yeah, that their numbers are down a little bit in terms of volume of pressures, but still substantially more than probably anybody we played by, maybe double. So they had some different approaches to some opponents. And so we'll have to figure that out obviously early, kind of what their plan is against us, and adjust accordingly. For the most part, did a decent job of recognizing stuff last year. Didn't execute it always how we wanted to, but just of keying into how they bring it is kind of job one.
So you know the right hand side of the room.
With Charles Nelson playing solely offense this season, how has it affected his productivity to be able to focus on just one side of the ball?
I think he's been fresher. I think the mental fatigue of trying to learn all those things, and including special teams in there as well. I think that's enabled him to be more confident in certainly in offensive production, and how we've used him, and then also in special teams.
Last year, you guys used sheets against ASU. David Yost was joking that you guys are going to use smoke signals this year. Have you guys?
Why do you say that? Great.
Is that something that you guys think about ahead of time in terms of how you're going to try to protect against ASU potentially stealing signals?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something you have to think about ahead of time, because you have to practice it. You have to work on the smoke signals. So we'll have to use something else now that you've given it up. But.
Andrew.
What was the origin story of the white sheets? Tyler Osborne was saying you guys were kicking them around, that idea, and a bunch of bad ones got shelved, and you went with the PVC pipe and the white sheets. Who came up with that idea, and would you use them again this week?
I don't recall, and I don't know. I just feel like I'm testifying before Congress, but I can't remember. We went through several different variations, but it was mobile and lightweight, useful, functional, and yeah, we'll hopefully have something as effective this year.
Do you remember were they more of a nuisance, if anything, when you were actually calling plays? Was the team able to still get the play signal in on time?
I don't recall them being a nuisance for us.
No. Any non-sheet questions?
Feel bad. I'm killing the sheet conversation. With Justin Herbert, I know that guys have thrown out, not necessarily like a direct Marcus Mariota comparison, but they've said that he does some things, or maybe in some ways reminds him of Mariota. Do you see that at all? And just in general, what have you seen from Herbert's progression the last two games?
I think he's a highly competitive, highly productive guy that's really quiet. I think they're very similar that way. Certainly their freshman years, just of how they present themselves, is remarkably similar. I think it's very unfair, obviously, to make that comparison on the field yet. And some of the things that Marcus, that's the nature of the media. I realize every week there's a player of the century, and that's what happens. But I think you also saw how much guys respect him, and how guys rallied around him in these last couple of games, I think, is telling.
A few weeks ago, you mentioned Jawan Williams making a block for Charles Nelson for 50 yards during his touchdown return. During the Cal game, he made another tackle to hold Trey Watson to a 14-yard game. Towards the end of the game, what can you say about his ability to make those key plays that aren't necessarily in the spotlight?
Well, they're big. Unfortunately, also had a block in the back that was in the spotlight that hurt us, and immediately took accountability for it. But yeah, Juwan's a guy that has helped a lot in some of those kind of unseen areas that most people don't acknowledge, and has been a big factor on a lot of those big returns.
Schooler, maybe not the player of the century this week, but does he win sort of an Ironman award? And can you just talk about the effort of the defense? It seemed like they got stronger even though they, faced 118 plays.
Yeah, definitely improved a lot in the second half and corrected kind of some of the easy whatever completions, easy touchdowns, easy yardage that we kind of gave up. Just from a schematic standpoint, and he did a much better job communicating when they had some of the funky formations, with one exception. And so again, he's one of those guys that his best ball's ahead of him. Much like Justin, of just a experience. He just needs experience.
Kind of going along the lines of guys playing more. Apelu and Sims, and I think Gary Baker have played quite a bit the last 2 weeks. Have you seen out of those guys and maybe their development? And then do you anticipate them having a more involved role defensively?
Who's the other
forward?
one?
Gary Baker, Apelu, and
Apelu, yeah.
Apelu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apelu, you'd get kicked off the island right there. Those guys, again, I think some of the things we did defensively allowed him to play faster, more freely, with more confidence. Same thing with Quan. They did some good things, again, missed some tackles, had some things certainly to shore up. And then our defensive line has been a weird mash unit, kind of in and out of games and availability and not. And so, Gary's a guy with a ton of potential, and we just need to see it.
I feel like a couple weeks ago you talked about what is good defense in this era of explosive offense. You said limiting to field goals in the red zone. You guys have struggled in that regard. A lot of touchdowns. I think it's 32 of 37 teams have scored when they're in the red zone on you guys. Are what's going on in the red zone, is that symptomatic of what's happening, the issues of the rest of the field for the defense? Or are there new things that crop up in that kind of tight area of the field that are new?
Well, yeah, each game's a little bit different. We did some things coverage-wise to kind of help our corners in this last game, and then we didn't execute what we were trying to do to help them. And so that's what makes it that much more frustrating is we knew what was coming and had the quote-unquote perfect call in there. Then we had two times where they had kind of the movement formation and two guys covered one and somebody didn't cover the other of just communication. There's three guys that have kind of never been on the field before, not getting that done. And so those are different problems, but unfortunately explosive similar results. And that's what you have to minimize. I mean, you have to, if you're a bail corner, play bail thirds and pick the ball, or bat it down and make them kick a field goal.
Rob.
I think you're the only defense with two freshmen, 1-2 in tackles. Fair to say that's a good news, bad news proposition to be in that situation right now?
Well, sure. I mean, anytime, it's kind of like the offensive line. Anytime you've got, that example, the two guys in there, that they're going to face something new every single week and some little nuance that's different every single week. And same with the front guys. There's going to be a pressure that's different, a front, a look. And so there's just that hesitation that takes place. And if you hesitate, against some of these guys in their front, it's over, or in space.
Speaks to the fact they've been making plays though too.
Absolutely, and that's the good, certainly the good news, bad news part of it, and nobody ever wants to hear about what's going to happen in the future. They won it last week, and we all do.
You guys talk about constantly searching for better and improvement. Just curious, how do you measure progress with this team? I mean, I know that obviously fans just see yards or wins and losses or whatever, but how do you kind of measure the progress that you guys are making?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously different within each position group or each individual. How hard guys have worked, how they've continued to play hard is a good sign. But again, Friday nights and Saturday afternoons, that's where that one 3 to 5 hour span that defines everything in a lot of ways, and it does in a lot of ways. And so that it's just the reality of where we are right now is, that is our record, and that's what we have to own. But we can certainly be the ones that stop it and get it flipped as well.
When you sign guys, typically, you normally want them here 5 years, 4 years, but sometimes in reality that's not the case. Guys leave for various reasons or have to retire. I think last 4 years you've lost like 24 players from injuries or just guys that leave the program. How much has that maybe impacted the depth of this team? And then what's the maybe acceptable attrition rate of a recruiting class?
It varies. I mean, it varies so much now. That's not uncommon at all when you look at rosters across the country. And last week I think there were 4 transfers that started at Cal. And there's guys this week. Same thing. And it happens, and it's various. It's for various reasons, whether it's injury, whether it's playing time. All a million things that go into it.
There was a former Oregon player last week during the middle of the Cal game who kind of mused on Twitter that you were holding a very large play card, that maybe you were calling plays, offensive plays. Was that the case at all, or was Matt still calling plays?
We didn't do anything differently in that game than we do in every other game.
A separate question is that with the offensive line, Jake Hansen, he had the chop block last week that obviously negated a big play, but Graves has been showering a lot of praise on him over and over. Can you assess kind of his development from a really highly rated guy you guys are praising quite a bit last year to actually what reality is like, 7 games in?
Yeah, that's the perfect position for it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It happens sporadically and gradually. That plays a perfect example of we had a situation where we have a guy that's blocking that linebacker, and sometimes that happens really fast. Sometimes it's a quick crack. Sometimes it's a slower type, but he's always blocked, and you don't want to take away that aggressiveness of a guy running out and being aggressive and cutting a guy. By the same token, I would bet a lot of money that'll never happen again. Just of how much, again, he cares and how much he continues to improve. And again, experience. He's going to get bigger, faster, stronger, going smarter, going against these guys. We'll going against these veteran guys the last few weeks will help him in the future.
Anything else? Okay, thanks.
Thanks.